At the start of World War I, the skies were quiet, with airplanes merely used for reconnaissance. But as the war progressed, these machines of flight evolved into powerful weapons that changed the course of history. From aerial dogfights to strategic bombing, airplanes revolutionized warfare. In this video, we'll explore how these flying innovations took combat to new heights and paved the way for modern military aviation. The first warplanes for reconnaissance. John Gatman, an expert in military aviation history and author of many books on airplanes and fighter pilots in World War I, asserts that the main mission of airplanes in this war was reconnaissance. Previously, hot air balloons were used to observe the overall battlefield, but in World War I, fixed-wing aircraft could fly deep into enemy-controlled areas to monitor enemy movements and survey the terrain. Gatman states that these aircraft typically have two seats, with one pilot and one observer. The observer sits in the front, using binoculars and taking notes. Initially, hand-drawn maps and quick notes may not be completely accurate, but they are extremely important. A typical example is in 1914, when British reconnaissance aircraft, along with the Royal Air Force, alerted British and French commanders to the German army advancing through Belgium to flank and attack Paris from behind. Thanks to this information, the Allied forces were able to defeat the German forces in a timely manner, leading to a significant victory in the Battle of the Marne. Not long after that, a reconnaissance camera was installed on the surveillance aircraft, allowing for the capture of dozens of aerial photographs. These photos were then developed and stitched together to create detailed maps of the battlefield. These detailed and zoomable images provided unprecedented intelligence information, helping battlefield commanders to accurately determine the positions of artillery and plan military movements. The first aerial combat and the flying aces. In the early stages of World War I, reconnaissance aircraft were still relatively new, to the point that when they encountered each other in the air, the pilots from opposing sides would even wave to each other. However, shortly after, the strategic importance of aerial reconnaissance work increased, accompanied by a growing need to intercept and shoot down enemy aircraft. John Gatman stated that until 1915, there was no concept of a fighter aircraft, but after the Battle of the Marne, military leaders began to seriously consider shooting down enemy reconnaissance aircraft. In the early aerial combats, reconnaissance aircraft moved at slow speeds and regularly shot at each other with handguns and rifles. They soon realized the need to mount machine guns in front of the observer's position in the aircraft, but this became difficult because when firing, they had to avoid the spinning propeller and other structures. The real revolution came when the interrupter gear, or synchronization system, was invented. This device allowed machine guns mounted in front of the aircraft to fire bullets through the rotating propeller without any risk. This allowed the pilot to simply point the aircraft's nose towards the enemy target and squeeze the gun trigger. Anthony Fokker, a Dutch engineer, is best known for inventing the first synchronization device for aircraft, a technology that he successfully applied to the Fokker EI in 1915. This single-seat fighter aircraft was not only lightweight and agile, but also highly effective in combat, to the point that the Allied forces gave it the name Fokker Scourge, or Fokker Menace. With the appearance of the Fokker E1 for the first time, there was a type of aircraft specifically designed for air-to-air combat. The French even created the title of Ace to honor outstanding pilots who could shoot down at least 5 enemy aircraft. Although these pilots were not lacking in skills or bravery, in many cases, those who emerged victorious in the early aerial combats were often pilots with superior technology. John Gatman emphasized that when fighter aircraft became feasible, it marked the beginning of an incessant arms race to gain the upper hand in the air. Operational capability, maneuverability, weapon systems, and the ability to rapidly gain altitude of an aircraft became important factors in the effort to outperform the opponent. Faced with these challenges, Allied engineers developed their own single-seat fighter aircraft, including the Sopwith Camel of Britain, named after the hump-like fairing on the aircraft fuselage that housed two synchronized machine guns. When Britain introduced the triplane, Germany responded with the Fokker Doctor 1, an aircraft used by Manfred von Richthofen, a famous pilot known as the Red Baron. He was credited with 80 victories before his death in 1918 on his red-colored triplane fighter aircraft. Zeppelin Airship drops bombs on civilian targets. When it comes to war and aerial attacks, the image that often comes to mind is the Blitzkrieg strategy, the lightning-fast assault that the Nazi Germany applied in World War II. However, the act of bombing from above, without specific targets, began early, specifically in 1915. That was when Germany deployed Zeppelin airships capable of flying at high altitudes to carry out nighttime attacks on civilian areas in London and Edinburgh. These Zeppelin airships were filled with hydrogen gas, initially used only for aerial reconnaissance, with altitudes reaching up to 11,000 feet, 3,352 meters. They could temporarily shut off their engines to carry out surprise attacks. The British public was outraged by what they described as innocent people killers, and the military responded by deploying fighter planes equipped with special incendiary ammunition capable of igniting hydrogen gas, causing the Zeppelins to burst into flames in the sky. The first bombing aircraft were actually reconnaissance planes equipped with additional weapons. In the situation of having to fight to withdraw from enemy territory, they carried out bombing as a counterattack measure. John Gatman described that one of the largest reconnaissance planes at that time, the Russian Ilya Muromets, with 4 engines, began using bombs to attack the enemy as a final retaliatory measure. Learning from Russia's tactics, the Germans developed their own giant bombing aircraft, Zeppelin Staaken, RVI. This was a biplane with a wingspan of up to 138 feet, 42 meters, and the ability to carry 9 people. This terrifying bombing aircraft carried out flights to London and Paris, dropping bombs weighing over 1 ton, including one that hit the Royal Chelsea Hospital in London, causing extensive damage. Preparing for World War II. Gatman said that by the end of World War I, no one doubted the importance of aircraft as a strategic weapon for the future. By 1918, the Allied bombing aircraft began flying in tight formations to carry out attacks on German weapons manufacturing plants along the border with France. In response, the German military deployed their fighter planes to engage in spectacular and fierce dogfights. These events laid the foundation for World War II, where control of the airspace became a key factor in the Allied forces' victory, not only in the skies of Europe, but also in the Pacific region.